It's Monday, May 9th, 2011. I'm Rem.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight we talk about, I forget. Oh yeah, memory.
Not fun.
Let's do
this.
You know, like am I opening a joke?
Have you ever had an opening joke that I liked in 6 years, 5 years?
Pretty much no.
No. So, what do you think of, I think about this one?
I can't remember.
Okay.
So, it's, the end of spring. It's the end of the season. I can't believe I forgot until just now, as in yesterday when I ordered groceries. But it's Fiddlehead season. So I got some Fiddleheads, and I'm going to saute them in garlic and butter in like an hour.
Why don't you just eat the garlic and the butter?
Well, the garlic and the butter, you see, are not food, but are merely things to put on food.
I disagree. Butter dip butter is the most excellent of foods.
Butter dip butter is more of an hors d'oeuvre. Perhaps a treat.
Is an hors d'oeuvre not food? Food is the superset.
If I eat it, does it not bleed deliciously into my mouth?
It does.
If I tickle it, doesn't, well, I guess it doesn't laugh.
It'll get your hands kind of greasy, and then you could use those greasy hands to make someone else laugh.
Oh, there's something about, because I've been biking to work every day, right? And it used to be I'd subway to work, subway home, run, and then do stuff. But biking 3 times a day is kind of making me hungry all the time, which makes me think about food all the time, which makes me cook more often, because when I'm hungry, I cook rather than eat out. As a result, I've been cooking a lot. I think I've mastered frittata. I got to move on to full-on quiche now.
Ugh, blech.
What's wrong with you? Do you like eggs?
Yeah.
Do you like nutmeg?
Yeah, it's all right.
Onions?
Yep.
Potatoes?
Yeah, potatoes good.
Tomatoes?
Yep.
Well, that's a quiche.
No, quiche is disgusting.
Why?
Because in their combination, a great evil is unfurled.
It's just egg pie.
That's disgusting.
You eat egg custard.
Egg custard is different. That's
How so?
That's egg cake.
I would argue an egg custard is a pie. In the same way that a cheesecake is, in fact, a pie.
Cheesecake is a cake.
It's not made out of bread.
It has graham cracker crust.
So does quiche. Sometimes.
Uh-huh.
It's a pie crust. Anyway. It's Monday. It's tech day. I had a lot I wanted to talk about, so I guess I had to narrow this down. I'm going to complain about a guy who wrote something stupid on the internet. So there's this guy on
here we go.
InfoWorld. This article was on Slashdot. It's actually making the rounds. A lot of people were talking about it.
But on Slashdot, it made the rounds a week ago.
Yeah. Thing is, I don't go to Slashdot to get stuff first. I go to Slashdot to get witty commentary. Or more importantly, Slashdot means I don't have to do research.
I don't read the comments on any site ever.
I pretty much only go to Farkin Slashdot, and you know what I do? I primarily read the comments and not the articles.
Between us, we've read the whole internet.
Pretty much. But basically, this is one of those guys who writes generic techie articles that then nerds complain about, totally missing the point usually. He's the kind of guy
None of these guys, hardly any of these guys have actual advanced technological knowledge.
Well, I learned a lot about these guys because way back when I worked at the hospital and I was bored and thinking about quitting.
The thing is, I've realized this problem in gaming and technology, and I'm sure it also exists in other areas, right? But consider this. If I read a restaurant review, right, that sounds pretty good to me, but I bet there are like chefs out there who are like, that restaurant critic doesn't know shit. Because if he knew shit, you know what he would be? A cook.
Not
right?
necessarily. Perhaps he simply loves to eat cupcakes, but not to bake cupcakes.
You can bake and eat the cupcakes together.
But see, I think here's the problem. People who love food enough to review food, who also learn to be professional chefs, die of obesity immediately.
That's what I'm saying.
There's a feedback loop. So thus, the people who are smart enough to not learn to cook are the only people who can survive being food critics.
Right, but like, things that I know about, like technology and gaming, I see these journalists writing about gaming or technology, and I bet to normal people, they sound like they really know what they're talking about. But the fact is, as someone who actually does technology and knows games. I guess I don't technically do games, but I know a lot more about games than a lot of game journalists.
Well, according to a lot of developers we've talked to, we think about games way more than they do.
Yes. The journalists don't know anything. So this is probably some tech guy who, if he knew more about technology, he would be a technologist and not a technology journalist.
Maybe he is. What about people like John C. Dvorak? He knows a lot.
He doesn't know nearly. No, he doesn't.
Well, let me put it this way.
He knows more about technology
John C.
companies
Dvorak
than actual computers.
Has a great breadth of knowledge in the techno industry at large.
It's very shallow.
It is very shallow, but it is very breadthful, and I can't disrespect him for that.
But the thing is, most of those guys, right, he doesn't know about, he knows enough about computers that he can use them and set them up and do all sorts of normal people things.
He also knows effectively how to troll.
Yes, but he knows a lot about, the tech companies. And like, even if he was writing an article about computers, it would go in the business section of the newspaper, not in the, technology section of the
But
newspaper.
he has more knowledge of tech than the vast majority of tech journalists.
It's true. But he's not going to be writing anything for like the ACM Journal or the IEEE, you know
But
what I'm
I
saying?
have for you a counterexample and then an anecdote.
All right.
Because the counterexample is that in the financial sector, I read articles on financial stuff, and those people know way more than me or most other people in the field about the field. They know a lot.
Then how come they're doing that instead of making mad monies?
They're making pretty good money, because usually the people who are writing the things that I'm reading are also published academics.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, the anecdotal evidence I have is that when I was sick of working at the hospital and I thought about giving up on IT completely, that was when I went to take the LSAT. I was like, I'll be a lawyer. And all our lawyer friends were like, God, no, you'll hate it. And then I was like, okay, I'll be a journalist. And I actually applied to a bunch of tech journalism jobs.
Yep.
And I ghost wrote for a bunch of tech journals and websites, because that's how you interview for places like that. You ghost write articles for them that they publish.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have to do work. They get free work, basically.
Yep.
So I got my assignments, and I wrote, and basically the assignments were pathetic. They were along the lines of, X is popular, write an article about how Y influences X.
So that we can increase the search engine traffic, because most people are searching for X.
Yep.
Yep.
And basically the vast majority of tech journalism seems to be that. And after interviewing
Internet
with these
journalism?
people, yeah, I gave up.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think Wired Magazine exactly has the hard-hitting tech writers either.
It has a few, but not many.
So anyway, this dude, Galen Grumman, wrote this thing where he basically says that wireless network infrastructure is being neglected, and it needs to be the core. It needs to be as well managed, as important, as central to enterprise as the wired network needs to be. And he goes
in
on,
what way does he mean that? Does he mean like the backbone of the internet should be wireless?
No. So he has all these statistics, which I am half of them I'm dubious of. I just don't think they're accurate.
Okay.
And the other half, even if they're accurate, he is begging the question and drawing the absolute wrong conclusion.
Because I do think that a lot of enterprise people, either A, they don't have wireless at all for security reasons.
Counterpoint, they don't need it.
Well, I think that there are some significant benefits to having it. Even if you don't need it, it could be significantly beneficial, and it is possible to make it secure enough as long as you don't use it, as long as you fence it off from certain applications, right? It's like, if people can get their emails on their phones with Wi-Fi walking around the office building.
But so here's where I
That's
think this is
worth
all
it.
BS. One of the examples he uses is the rapid growth of smartphones and how many people have smartphones that have Wi-Fi capabilities, and how if they could use those on the wireless network, things would be so much better. Yet the vast majority of what anyone does with a smartphone in any professional context is read email, get pages, respond to email and pages.
Yep.
You can do that over your 3Gs.
But actually, if I was enterprise and I'm worried about security, I would rather have if those things going over the Wi-Fi in my company on my company's network than going over the 3G of AT&T
But
or something
the
like that.
Wi-Fi, so having the secure Wi-Fi would be pointless, because the only reason to have one of those devices is because you're leaving the office. You're going somewhere else.
Yes, but at least more of the traffic that has the emails.
Nope, because no one uses their goddamn BlackBerry when they're in the office.
Yeah, they do.
Who? Their computer's there.
You go look at any office. There's just people walking around the offices with Blackberries.
You know what?
I don't know what offices you've been to, but that's all I see when people walk. And anyone who gets up to walk around in the bathroom, phones are in their hands. They're looking at them.
See, I've seen that. You know what?
In conference rooms, Blackberries all over the table.
The only people who were ever checking their email on their Blackberries in the offices were the mid-level executives. And most of the people I see walking around with a phone have a web page up.
I see everybody from top to bottom doing that.
I don't see that. Of course, I've always worked in big enterprise where, it's a very different environment. But nonetheless, I don't think there's any benefit to people. Plus, most BlackBerries don't handle connecting to WANs gracefully.
Well, who's using a BlackBerry?
Most
that's your
enterprise
real,
users.
I know, that's your other problem. Trash your BlackBerry server. Use Exchange and get Windows or Android or iPhones.
Now, we've talked about this. The plausible deniability of using BlackBerry basically protects you from all possible litigation in the event of a problem.
What's not plausibly deniable about an Exchange server?
Hardly anyone uses that on phones for enterprise.
Oh,
It'll change.
It
Don't
works.
get me wrong. It will change. Yeah, it works. But it's safer from a business
These
perspective.
people already have Exchange servers. They just have to turn ActiveSync on. Done. One click.
Plus,
it's
most
a
of the
checkbox.
people who care about this, who actually want to receive their work email, they're BlackBerry types anyway. A lot of them don't have their own smartphone. A lot of them are happy to have gotten the work smartphone.
Anyway.
Otherwise, he points out that a lot, like the use of wireless printers is on the rise, and the wireless, like ebook readers. He says 38% of these people in businesses have ebook readers.
You don't need an ebook reader at work.
No.
What possible thing at work could you need? Why would you need the ebook reader to be on the work network?
Yep. Or here's a good example: barcode scanners for inventory control. You know what? Yeah, that's a great wireless application, and you know what? It requires effectively zero bandwidth.
Yeah, almost none.
It's also
you drop a couple access points strategically in the warehouse so that you get coverage, and that's it.
Now, you could make
and
a
you
point.
have those on a separate network where
I mean,
the
basically,
barcode app is the only application accessible.
His article is pretty stupid, and I disagree with almost everything he says. But there is a point to be made that, one, wireless networks are almost always shittily managed or non-existent
That's
in
true.
any company. My company happens to do it right. We have a wireless network with, proper authentication, and strangers in our office who are visiting, we can give them a code, they can connect, and they only get access to the internet and things we gave them access to.
Yep.
Completely sequestered from the real corporate network, let alone the production networks.
Yep.
Separately, say you're in a business where you need wireless on some sort of production network. You have two wirelesses on two different frequencies.
Even my house has 4 wirelesses on 2 different frequencies. My house, which only has one person living in it, with a router I bought on Amazon.
One of the points the guy
Expensive
makes
one, but
is that you
regardless.
need to centrally manage your wireless with the same level of efficiency and proficiency that you manage your wired network. No
Indeed.
shit. Duh.
Duh.
Manage all your IT professionally.
Yeah, I think what he's saying, though, is there are a lot of places that just don't have wireless at all.
Which is fine, because I would argue
But
that
you
in
could
most
you could use
business situations, most offices, it is cheaper, safer, faster, and more reliable to use wired for everything. Because almost any office space you go into will have a centralized network infrastructure already in the building.
You got to have a wireless, though. I mean, at the very least, you've got people coming into the office who are clients or outsiders, and they want to get some internets.
Yep, and you know what? It's trivial to set up a DMZ
Right, but I'm
wireless
saying
internet.
there are places that have no wireless.
But that doesn't seem to be what this guy is arguing. He's arguing that your actual real corporate network, the one your real shit is on, should be mostly wireless.
That's retarded.
I mean, wireless printer? What the hell? You can't afford to run a cable?
I guess if you had some kind of weird ass office and you couldn't wire it for some reason.
I could see this being the case
But
if you had places where people are highly mobile, a stupid office
The
where
thing
people
is-
just use laptops and wander around all over the place.
But the thing is, even if you had, let's say you have that. Let's say you have an office that's a big open space. There's no walls or whatever, and everyone has MacBook Airs that don't have network cards, and everyone just has wireless everything, and you roam around the office. You know what? You'll still need to run a wire to the access point from the internets, which is probably in the corner of the office on a rack or something, where your firewalls and your servers are.
Yeah,
They
I don't
have to
think
be
he's
wired.
saying- I don't
so you
think he's
need
saying that
wire.
needs to go
You
away.
got to run the wires anyway to
I
the
don't-
access points.
I
You
don't
might as
think-
well you could stick a switch there instead of the access point, and suddenly you've got to block it to cubes.
Actually, your example is pretty terrible because, yeah, that wire is a given. But if it's a big open space with nowhere to run wires, then yeah, wireless is a lot cheaper and easier than running wires all over the office as opposed to
I don't know.
a 2-foot wire
The
from
thing
the
is-
router to the access point.
No, but I mean, it depends how big the office is, first of all, right? And second of all, wires are really cheap. You can get a whole bundle of them for nothing, and you can get little, switches so that, for really nothing. But good access points can be very expensive if you need a lot of them. Like, if you need 5 or 6 of them, that could be like $1,000.
The other thing is, I think a lot of newer companies that are starting up or people who are making new office spaces have this idea, and this article is playing to that going all wireless or going mostly wireless is a good idea. And
No,
it introduces
not
too
at
many
all.
security problems. Wireless technology is not great. it introduces expenses.
Also, if everyone's using wireless, it's like you know when you go to a conference and too many people use wireless and it doesn't work. Imagine that every day if you have a lot of people in the office.
Yep.
That'd be the worst thing ever.
And I mean, that's it. I could go into more and more about why I think this article is pretty dumb. Like, he goes on, like 75% of users have tablets and tons of people have laptops.
But you're not supposed to use those at work.
What are you going to use a tablet for at work unless you're walking around?
Unless you're a developer who's developing a tablet application, in which case there's going to be like a Wi-Fi there for you.
Or one big use of tablets that is really important is anyone who has to be mobile and capture data from things. Like walking around, checking on business processes, or doing inventory control. A wireless barcode scanner and a tablet you can hold is 1,000,000 times more efficient than any sort of other device.
The thing is, even with systems like that, you know, like I said, cover the warehouse in wireless, or you could even just as efficiently set up some sort of system where you go around collecting data on the tablet, and then when you're done, you just put the tablet in a dock, and then it gets wired, and then all the data comes out.
Yeah.
So you know, and that's just almost as efficient.
I guess my problem with fluff articles like this is that he makes a bold assertion that isn't really backed up, and the data is kind of specious and shitty. And independently, the other point he makes that is legitimate is a useless point. He basically is saying wireless should be administered properly.
Yeah, everything should be administered properly.
So that's the end of my crotchety tech news.
Anyway, you know they always have those pwn to own things. Where it's like, you know, if you can, you know, hack this laptop, then you get it and like stuff like that.
I detect a pronunciational shift from pun slowly to poon.
Anyway,
and eventually to pone.
I think that's how they pronounce the contest. But the point is, that contest happened a while ago, and it won't be happening again for quite a while. But
you know what? If you
Chrome,
can beat me in Advance Wars, I'll give you my copy of Advance Wars.
No, you have to give me the DS. That's how it would work.
That's fine.
Yeah, but if I lose, I don't have to give you anything. Well, Chrome always wins those things. Basically, no one ever cracks the Chrome. But just now, VUPEN Security, VUPEN, has puninated.
I do prefer punned. I like the idea that
owned.
I know I'm the minority opinion, but before there was voice on the internet, there was a dichotomy, and people in some areas said pun, some said poon, some said pone.
Right.
Pone and own works because it's like it fits the word. You were owned, you were pwned. But the origin was a typo. Punned is the way you would actually pronounce it as reading.
Anyway, so these people, they have discovered a security problem in Google Chrome. They got it. They fought, you know, no one else has ever, I don't think, gotten one, at least not in recent memory.
They got
one, and it's of the biggest kind. It bypasses all security features, even the sandbox, and it's silent, so there's no crash. And it's an undisclosed 0-day vulnerability. It works on all Windows systems and Chrome version 11.6.9, whatever. And basically, they have a video here that shows them doing it, and they can, through Google Chrome, run arbitrary binary instructions on your computer, period.
Glad I don't use Chrome.
Well, I'm just saying, right, is what's interesting about this story is not that somebody owned Chrome, even though that's kind of rare, right? It's that usually when someone discovers a vulnerability, right, they announce it in sort of different ways, right? There's the one where they just announce it to the world, and it's like, aha, you got to fix it now before everyone starts hacking you. Sometimes they're like, they whisper it to the company in question, you know, so that they can fix it and release a patch. And then when the patch comes out, then they announce it on the same day as the patch comes out. Sometimes they whisper it to the company, but then they're like, company, you got 30 days to fix it, or else we're going to announce it, right? In this case, the rumor seems to be that this VUPEN Security is trying to do a blackmail situation.
What?
They're like, Google, pay us a bunch of money or else we'll tell. And Google already, I mean, I know Mozilla has bounties. I'm pretty sure Google also has some sort of bounties for finding, you know, for doing finding certain
well, I guess
vulnerabilities
there's a moral question
or solving
here.
bugs or features of some kind.
There's a very fundamental moral, or I guess this is actually straight up ethics.
This is straight up legal, right? I mean, they're blackmailing.
Well, independently, is it ethical?
Or at least extorting.
Is it ethical to ask for a finder's fee for finding an undisclosed, unknown vulnerability in someone's software?
Well, you're wording it differently. Is it extorting, or is it blackmailing, or is it finder's fee? It's the same thing.
Well, is it though? Here's my question. Is it a crime, or should it be a crime, to disclose truth that you acquired through legal means?
Well, I mean, if they just disclose it, people have done that. I don't really have a problem with that. It's the extorting
No,
of
but
money.
here's what I'm saying. So this is why it's an interesting argument. So it is okay to disclose a vulnerability that I find through legal means. Like, it is ethically, you can't fault someone for telling the truth. Is that correct?
Right.
So, is it ethical to tell someone else who could fix it and who is affected by it that it exists? This vulnerability.
You could tell anyone whatever you want.
All right. Is it ethical to say to them, here's the bug. If you don't give me money, I will tell other people.
No. That's a line there.
But how so? I'm basically telling the truth.
You're threatening somebody.
But at what
It's not that telling the truth is always okay. It's threatening someone that's not okay.
So what if I don't actually threaten? What if I simply say I found this vulnerability? I plan to tell the public in a week.
You can do that. ...
Unless, someone gave me something.
Well, there you go. You crossed the line again, didn't you?
So that's the line?
Yeah, I think so.
So I can't... So what if I ask for a finder's fee? I don't even blackmail. I just say, would you be willing to pay me for the fact that I found this?
Well, I think there might already be a bounty or something.
Without threatening, just saying, will you pay me for the fact that I found this?
You can ask, sure.
And then if they don't respond or say no, if you just happen to release to the public the thing you found?
Well, I mean, you're not threatening them.
Ah, so implied threats are okay?
It's not an implied threat. If you're either threatening them or you're not.
So as long as I don't actually directly threaten them, it's okay to blackmail the ever-living fuck
You're
out
not
of them.
blackmailing them if you're not threatening them. Threat is part of blackmail.
I sent someone the naked pictures I got of them, and I'm like, hey, I found these pictures. I'm thinking about just publishing them,
All right.
Would you be willing to pay me for the pictures?
I don't know.
At what point did I make a threat?
I don't know. The point is, I think there is a definite line where if you threaten someone, that is no good now.
I mean, my ethics are pretty simple. My personal ethical analysis is that if I find a severe vulnerability in software that is publicly available, I would inform the company, but if they did not respond or take me seriously or agree to fix it in a reasonable span, I would announce it publicly.
That's a good idea. I don't even know what I do. I might just be like,
I don't really go for it.
Yeah.
I don't really care enough.
I guess if it was, if it was like a Mozilla situation where I know they have bounties, I would just be like, hey, you have a bounty I'd like to collect. Here you go.
I know tons of vulnerabilities in enterprise software because it's all shittily written.
You should go and blackmail
Yeah, I
them.
should. What am I going to blackmail them with? I call up, one of the huge, I'm not going to name any names but
huge company.
I call up one of these huge companies, be like, if you don't pay me, I'm going to tell the world that your software sucks balls.
Okay.
But it sucks. Don't you care? Because no one cares.
No one cares.
So things of the day. What do you got for me? You forgot, didn't you?
Nope, I didn't.
Okay.
So, Star Trek, right?
Which one?
That thing I don't like.
So, any particular Star Trek?
A Star Trek I guarantee you've never seen or heard of.
All right.
I know, weird that I would know a Star Trek that you've never seen or heard of.
Well, let's see.
So.
I mean, not many. See, I could make a nerdy joke and be like, oh, you mean Voyager, but anyway.
In the year 1971, right?
Star Trek Christmas special?
No.
Star Trek cartoon?
No. This
Okay.
21-year-old dude who is in college at Ohio State University was in a class, a TV production class.
Oh, I saw this on the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as his final exam, he made a 5-minute episode of Star Trek on a 1-inch open reel videotape. He transferred it to U-matic. I don't even know what the hell that is. He transferred it to Beta. I know what that is. And he got an A- on his project.
A-.
And now he has transferred it to YouTube.
As well he should.
And you can now watch it.
My head is off to you, good sir.
I don't even like Star Trek, but it's like, this is so hellish. How can you not make a thing of the day?
I think you would actually like later Next Generation.
Whatever.
I think you would.
I'm watching better shows.
What though? I mean, what problem do you have? Isn't the sci-fi you like hard sci-fi with serious ethical and scientific questions and ambiguous answers as to morality?
You know what I don't like? Two spaceships sitting perfectly still, shooting lasers at each other, not even trying to dodge or anything.
You know, that's actually probably how real space combat would be.
No, I'm pretty sure it would be more like X-Wing and TIE Fighter.
No.
Yeah.
Probably not.
You can move in all, or Descent 3, move in all possible
Actually,
directions.
if it wasn't like Star Trek,
or
it
free
would,
space.
you realize if it wasn't like Star Trek, Scott, it would be most likely very similar to Battlestar Galactica.
Which Battlestar Galactica?
The new one.
Yeah, that was a pretty good space fighting going on there.
But Star Trek, I think, is similarly plausible.
The point is, if there were space battles, all space...
They would not be like Star Wars, as much as we want them to be like Star Wars.
The space fighters would be able to move in any possible direction.
There wouldn't be space fighters. There'd be cannons that shoot you from light years away.
That also.
Like Star Trek.
No, but they're right next to each other.
No, they're not. Do you know how far away they are?
So that they can see each other and they can talk on the radio in real time, on the video telephone.
How do you know it's actually real time?
They're talking on the video telephone in real time.
How do you know it's real time?
Because there's no delay.
How do you know there's no delay?
There's no delay.
How much Star Trek have you seen?
They can even talk to Earth in real time.
No, they can't.
Yeah, they can.
No, they can't.
I'm pretty sure they do.
So, my thing of the day.
They can even, the spaceship even goes faster than the light, so the radios definitely can go.
You know
they
those
have
videos.
Ansibles.
The videos where someone takes like a compilation of like all the times Tom Hanks pees in a movie.
Oh, that's a good one.
Well, that is a good one. We were at work the other day, right? We're having this like lunch meeting, and we're talking about movies, and Tom Hanks movies came up, and I brought up my anecdote about Tom Hanks peeing in movies. Nobody believed me.
And you watched it.
And I showed it, and they were like, wow, how did you find that or know that?
Because I look on the internet every day. What are you looking at? Television?
The internet makes us likened unto wizards and or gods. So, this is a video that I'm happy someone made. Dave Riley will love this video. It is the great sandwiches from movies of all time.
Oh, snap. I can't even think of like that many great sandwiches.
It's got the PB&J.
Was there a Blondie and Dagwood movie?
Here's an example. There was.
Does that...
It's not in there, though. You've never seen that movie?
No, but
Really?
I'm sure it had a fucking giant sandwich in it.
Really? It's black and white. It's from the era of movies that you enjoy.
Does it have a gigantic sandwich?
Yes.
I'm sure it does.
Anyway, it's got the
Wasn't
PB&J that the
there
kid from the Neverending Story
Wasn't there a
eats.
Three Stooges sandwich that was pretty epic?
I don't want to spoil this thing, but the number one sandwich is the sandwich that Dave makes when he has the presidential kitchen in the movie Dave.
Oh, that's a fucking sandwich right there.
Dave is one of my favorite movies.
It's a great movie. I thought it was
is.
my favorite movies, but it's a great movie that is not brought up enough.
You know what?
It
It's
is
one
like
of my favorite movies in the genre of politician does
Sanctuary.
what's right.
Saying it's actually kind of funny because I never made the connection until just now, but it's basically Sanctuary / Eagle, but from the U.S. And I saw that before I ever heard about Sanctuary or Eagle.
Yeah.
I think it's older than both of those.
And Dave and Bulworth are actually very similar movies, except that Bulworth has the more realistic ending.
It's a rated G version, and I don't know if Dave is actually rated G, but
I don't know.
I think it might be PG or PG-13
If
because
you've
there is
never
that
made the
scene
movie
where the
Dave-
president has a heart
if you've never
attack
seen the
having
movie
sex with
Dave-
a mistress.
which was made in 1993.
90. Yep.
That was a long time ago.
Yep.
But I'm looking at the sandwich, and oh my God, I'm hungry now. When he's grating the carrots onto it at the end.
It's a movie everybody needs to see. That's all I
look
can
at that
say.
sandwich. Oh my God.
Yep. Taxpayers paid for that sandwich, but not really. Movie budget paid for that sandwich. I wonder how many times he had to do that scene where he made and ate the sandwich.
He even eats, they show him eating the sandwich.
I know. Well, how could you not?
Yeah, it's a good sandwich.
And it'd be a really easy acting job, the eating part. So maybe there was only one take, but the making part might be hard.
Doesn't always work out. I mean, Vitamin to Vegemin.
I'm just saying the making part might have had to have multiple takes.
You know,
and all the interns probably ate all those sandwiches.
as an aside, I'm curious, you youngins out there, you kids listening to Geeknights, does Vitamin to Vegemin mean anything to you?
Maybe.
I'm curious. Does it mean anything to you, Scott?
Yeah, I know what it is.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm curious. Listeners, let me know if you know.
I'm not really a big fan, though.
No, I'm not. Well, it's important to television history.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious. I feel like that was common knowledge in our generation, and I don't know if it's still common knowledge.
It's not common knowledge in our generation.
I think it is
No.
due to one factor and one factor alone.
Nick at Night?
Nick at Night.
No, a lot of kids didn't watch Nick at Night. And plus, anyone who's like 1 or 2 years younger than us, by the time that
It's not our generation.
Nick at Night was gone.
Not our generation. We've proven this. You, me, and Skojo remember all the same things from our childhood, and yet people born 2 years before us, completely different childhood in terms of media.
Whatever. But the point is, I bet there's a whole bunch of people who are exactly.
I think anyone
I bet there are
born-
people even older than us, like early 30s people, Do not know what it is.
Maybe not. The Nick at Night Factor. I think almost anyone born in America between 1979 and 1983 knows what vitamin and Vegemin is.
I don't know, because remember they moved it to TV Land, a different station? That's when... Anyway.
Yeah, that was the end.
And then when the Snick came around...
Oh, my God, Snick.
Then there was no more... You couldn't really see Nick at Night unless you stayed up way too late.
And, of course, in the meta moment, the Geeknights Book Club book is still Isaac Asimov's Foundation.
Yep. Other interesting things, events around the town.
We're going to be at PAX Prime if you want to buy a badge.
That's a long time from now.
They're sold out. So, fucked.
You could buy a bunch of single-day badges, loser.
Yep.
Anyway.
We might be at PAX Dev. Might be at Otakon.
May 21st and 22nd is Barcamp NYC. You got to go to the website and register, even though it's free. You have to register for each day separately, but it's free. You should go. I'm helping organize that shit, even though I'm going to be really tired because I'm going to be up all night Friday, May 20th. In the
Running
library.
around the library, chasing Slimer.
I don't think I'll be running in the library. Other interesting events.
This weekend, board game night, Nerd NYC, down at Think Coffee.
Friday.
And
June 18th is recess, all day board game night, basically. And that's good enough.
Yeah, that's good enough.
You should follow me on Twitter.
And you should follow me on Twitter.
APRECHE.
You know what? Follow at APRECHE, at SCHEZAR, and at Geeknights.
Yeah.
Rhymes with weeknights. We've also...
I think they can figure that one out.
You know, it amazes me. It's weird. People I talk to who are our age, who are connected to the internet, I'm like, Geeknights. And they're like, oh, okay, and they just Google it. People who aren't super internet-y or who are a lot older, usually I say, Geeknights. They're like, how do I find it? And I'm like, Google for it. And they're like, well, Google for what? I'm like, Geeknights. What do you mean Geeknights? Like weeknights, but geek. Can you spell that for me? This happens to me a lot at conventions.
And this is why, right, in the olden days, old people were smarter than the young people, right?
When
because
an old man walks in,
they had the years and years of experience and knowledge built up in their brains, whereas young people didn't. And the young people needed to live and learn and learn and learn and learn to get enough in their brains to become old people. But now... everyone has a library in their pocket, and only young people actually go to the library.
You know, I feel
whereas
like
old people are still going to the library.
I feel like I need to differentiate because there's two kinds of old. We need separate words. Because on one hand, there's physically old, you've lived longer.
No, I'm saying
but
old of mind.
No, but I'm saying you do generate, by being older, even of mind, wisdom. I know a lot of weird stuff about being alive that I realized talking to punk kids in the forum. They don't know. They don't know things about checking accounts.
No, but you can learn them if you go on Google.
Yeah, but I learned them because I'm old. It just happened.
I learned them because I got a checking account.
Yeah.
I went to the bank and said, hey.
Yeah, but you knew to even do that. But anyway.
you don't know. I wonder about checking accounts. Maybe I should go to the bank or the bank's website.
But anyway, I think really what it comes down to is people who are conservative. Generally conservative, as in this far, no farther. Those are the people who don't realize they can just go to Google. Not even go to Google. If they just go to the bar at the top of their computer, because the Internet Explorer is the computer, and type Geeknights, it'll probably get to us.
Yeah, probably.
Anyway, talking about memory.
Right. So, we got this idea because a lot of people, don't understand how memory in a computer works. And
the same argument comes up in our forum regularly where someone says, I prefer browser X over browser Y or application X over application Y because application Y uses way more memory than X.
Right. We'll get to that because that's what spurred this idea on. We'll discuss that issue later. But I wanted, we decided let's do a show on memory period, because people don't know how that shit works, right? So basically, the thing is, your computer, the number one most important thing in a computer is memory.
Because a processor can process all it wants. All right, I add 2 binary numbers. Great. Where's the answer go?
Right. A transistor, right, can be on or off, but it has, it's basically doing work. It's like a saw. A saw can cut 2 pieces of wood, but you got to put the wood somewhere after it falls off the edge of the cutting board, right? So memory is, can hold a 0 or a 1 in it. and keep that 0 or 1 there. A transistor can't hold on to a 0 or 1.
Well, it can if you don't ever give it anything else.
Yeah, but you can't read, it's not memory.
No.
Right? So memory is pretty much anything that can hold on to data. You can say, memory, remember this 0. Okay. And then later you can come back and say, memory, what are you holding in you? And he'll say, 0, sir. That is memory. And
think of it this way. If I make a really simple circuit, just wires that represent binary numbers, I can add them together with a very simple circuit.
Yep.
I don't even need transistors.
Nope.
And the result will
Just
come out
need
the other
gates,
end.
which are probably made of transistors.
So if I connect the end to light bulbs, I have a circuit that performs one calculation once forever.
Yep. So
if I turn the computer off and turn it back on, it gives me the same answer again.
Yep. So a CPU with its billions of transistors, right, can do a lot of work of adding and multiplying and dividing and moving and reading and writing, but it can't actually remember anything except for the fact that it has a little bit of memory in it. The most important memory in the whole computer, the registers, the memory that only computer scientists know about. How many registers do you think are every different chip in the world has, different kind of chip at least, has different numbers of registers of different sizes with different purposes.
The numbers have gone up.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that like an x86 CPU or a 64-bit CPU only has like 8 or 16 registers in it or something. It's not a lot of registers. And the registers, guess how big they are?
I wonder if they've guessed. I wonder if we should do this like Blue's Clues.
I don't know. But yeah, if you haven't figured it out, in a 64-bit chip, each register holds 64 bits, usually, right?
So, it used to be that it mattered a lot as to when you're thinking about performance. People talk about level 1 cache, level 2 cache, level 3 cache. And if we want the broader picture, let's zoom way out from registers. The CPU is doing stuff. You've got memory right at the CPU. Like the memory the CPU is directly accessing.
The registers?
On its die, in fact.
The registers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as you zoom out, you've got memory that's further and further away, both physically and computationally, from the CPU. It's further away physically, so it takes more time to get stuff out of it. It's further away temporally, because usually to make it bigger, you have to have levels of abstraction on top of it.
Yeah.
You address the memory, like, give me this chunk of memory, give me that chunk of memory.
No, you're getting way too ahead of yourself here. Basically, the thing is memory, right? There's a quantum problem here, right? In that you want to have a lot of memory, but memory takes up a lot of space. And even though it's a couple inches, that matters a fuck ton, right? A transistor is a quantum device. It's operating on, the level of electrons, right? So if the thing is an inch away, that makes all the difference in the universe. That's why the memory that is closest to the CPU, basically the fastest memory there is so tiny, because that's all you can fit in a small enough space to where it actually work that quickly.
Now, there are more concerns, too, about power and addressing, and you don't care about the core level. No one cares, except computer engineers. And even they often don't care.
Right.
But basically, the point I want to get at is that you've got this hierarchy of memory. And as you go further away, it gets slower and slower and slower. Then eventually, after all these caches, you get to the RAM. And then after that, you get to the disks.
Yep.
And then after that, you get to stuff you've stored out on the internet.
Yep.
And then after that, you get to stuff stored on tape. Tape is memory. It's just really fucking slow to get at it. Some guy's
gotta
gotta
go to the
pull
closet.
the cassette out.
You gotta get it. You gotta put it in the machine. You gotta run the tape through. All right. But anyway, the way a computer works, right? People don't seem to realize this. When you turn it on, what a computer does, most computers, is they look at addresses in memory, right? All the memory in the whole computer has addresses. And the computer, when it turns on, looks at address number 0, usually. At least in most computers. And it takes whatever's in the memory at address number 0, loads it into a register, and then does whatever that says to do. And usually it'll say something like, go to address, read some memory from, read from the disk this and put it in this area of memory, and then move forward to number 1 and start working again.
So think of this. You got bio. Computer starts from nothing. It executes one hard-coded instruction. and that tells it where to look. Eventually hits the bootloader, hits the disk, pulls up the beginning of your operating system, which then loads the rest of the operating system.
Think of it like you have a book of instructions, right? And the instructions all have line numbers on them. It's like a choose your own adventure book, right? And it starts at 0.
A really boring one.
A really boring one. It starts at 0, and there's an instruction, and you follow the instruction, and then you go. If it doesn't tell you to go somewhere else, you just go to 1 and do the next instruction. And if that doesn't tell you to go somewhere else, like go to number 30 or something like that, you go to number 2, and you just follow the instructions straight through. And that's how a computer works. And the way it does this is there's a register that has the current number of the line it's on. So it always remember what line it's on right now. And there's another register that has the thing you should do right now, the current instruction that you should be doing. And so all the computer does is it looks in the memory at, whatever number it's supposed to be on, follows that instruction, and then makes the number go up by 1 and follow the next instruction. That's all the computer does. It just goes through. So the memory is where all the instructions are. It's the most important thing.
Oh my God. I just noticed that my thing of the day, the line underneath says this also serves as an in memoriam reel. And I realized that every one of those sandwiches died in the course of production. Anyway, so all that stuff, the core of it, doesn't really matter. You should understand, you should remember what registers are and caches and everything, but really, everything under RAM, faster than RAM, doesn't matter to the average user. You buy a CPU, whatever CPU you buy has all that. Like when you think about the subtle differences between a Xeon processor or, an i7, i9, i5, Core, whatever, some of that has to do with how much caching it has, how many registers it has, where they are, how they're accessed. But
the number of registers isn't going to be different.
Well, yeah, but how they're accessed, how much cache there is there a level 2 cache, level 3 cache, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Is it on die, off die?
Basically, the way it works is computers generally automatically, right? Like, let's say you're watching a video or something like that, right? Well, it loads the video from the hard drive into the memory so it can actually read it. And then, if there's the program that's actually decoding the video, right, is probably getting used a whole lot. So it'll probably move some parts of that program or the whole thing into the cache because it keeps using that all so often, that the computer can go a lot faster if it keeps that, data closer to the CPU.
Now, the same thing happens at every level. So the level that matters to you guys is RAM because you do the same thing. You've got shit on the disk and shit in your RAM.
Yep.
If you pull something from the disk into RAM to do something with it, because it's a lot faster, RAM is orders of magnitude faster than the disk.
Even if you have a solid state drive, it's still orders of magnitude faster.
It's a good idea if you've got a lot of RAM to keep whatever you just read off the disk in the RAM, because it costs you almost nothing to get rid of it from the RAM if you don't need it anymore.
Yep.
But if it's in the RAM, it's really fast to do that thing again. And at every level, between any two kinds of memory, the same basic logic is going on. This is why it doesn't matter that applications use a lot of RAM unless you don't have enough RAM.
Yeah, it's pretty much like, let's say you're, think about your wallet, right? You got a bunch of credit cards in your wallet, and you put the credit card that you use the most often in the front. And you put the credit card that you use the least often in the back. And that, and every time you use a credit card, you move it to the front, then eventually they're going to automatically be arranged in this really efficient, way to where the most used ones are the easiest to get at, and you'll save the most time.
You take a hit if you got to get the credit card that's not in the nice part that's buried under your license, your driver's license or something. It's like when you have a cash miss.
Yeah, but the thing is, that'll help you go the fastest, but it's not like, you're going to be better off if you leave some empty slots in your wallet, right? Empty slots don't get you anything. You might as well put some cards in there because maybe you will need them, and it'll be a lot slower to go back home and get them than if they were in those empty slots. So there's no reason not to fill up your entire wallet if you have enough cards to fill up the whole wallet.
Where this misconception that Firefox or something using a ton of RAM is a bad idea came from seems to be that for a long time, Linux, the philosophy of memory management in Unix and Linux systems was use all the goddamn RAM because
it still
it's there.
is. Yeah,
yes, it always has been.
If you go, Linux automatically does this for you without you even realizing it. It automatically caches as much as it can from disk, no matter what. And if you type free space -m on the command line on a Linux machine, it'll show you how much memory is free and used, and there'll be one line that says +- buffer is cached. And even though it might seem to you by reading that chart that you have 0 memory free, the fact is you actually have a lot free. It's just caching so much from the disk so that it doesn't have to go and read from the slow-ass hard drive. It's
basically, you play an
keeping,
MP3, and the MP3 is 5 megs. The whole thing's just in RAM unless something else needs that RAM.
Yeah, Linux keeps, your dentist card that you use once every 6 months in the wallet if you just used it because, well, why not? I don't have anything else in the wallet, so maybe I'll get my teeth knocked out.
Now,
and then I don't want to have to go back home to get it.
Many people didn't know about computers. They had a Windows computer back in like the 3 days, the 311 days, the Windows 95 days.
Yep.
And one of the metrics of performance they'd always look at is how much free RAM do they have.
Well, that was very important in those days.
If they didn't have a lot of free RAM, they'd want to get some more. They'd complain about stuff using a lot of RAM, which was kind of legit because Windows didn't cache a lot. If the RAM was used, it was usually being used by a program, and you'd be hitting the swap because you never had enough RAM.
Yeah, that's the thing is if you run out of space, if you use all of your RAM, then you have a problem because what happens is the computers do a thing called paging to where all the things that are in memory are stored in pages, like pages of a book. And what'll happen is it'll take pages if your RAM is full and it still needs to put more things in the RAM because it can't work directly off the disk. It has to work off, it can only follow instructions that are in the memory. It'll actually take pages from memory, write those pages onto the hard drive, and then read from the hard drive and put it in the new empty space. And the thing is, sometimes what happens is if you have like 2 applications that are both working at the same time and there's no memory left, you'll get what's called thrashing, to where it's constantly taking pages out of memory, putting them on the disk, taking pages off the disk, putting them into memory, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and you're out of RAM, and it's using your hard drive like RAM, and your computer slows to a crawl, and your disk goes because it's thrashing all the time, and that is bad if you run out of RAM.
I'll look at my computer right now. I'm recording Geeknights right now. I got Firefox open. It's been open for like weeks.
Yep.
Doing stuff. And right now I got 6 gigs of RAM.
That's a lot.
You know why I have 6 gigs? Because I have 6 DIMMs and I had to populate 3. So 2 gigabyte DIMMs were really the only thing I could get.
Yeah, you weren't going to use 1 gig sticks because then you'd have 3 gigs, which isn't enough.
I'm thinking
and
about...
4 is about right, though.
Now, I'm thinking about getting more.
What do you need more for?
Well, video editing.
Maybe.
But anyway, right now, recording Geeknights with my FireWire and all this stuff, I got 3 gigs of RAM cached and about 2 gigs available, not even used.
Uh-huh.
And yet Firefox is using 412, 413, 414 megabytes.
Yep. And people are like, oh my God, it's using so much. And it's like, well, is it crashing? Well, no.
Audition, meanwhile.
Is it swapping? Well, no.
Audition,
is it
which
working?
is recording
well, yeah.
Geeknights currently, is using 180 megabytes.
All right. It's back in the day, you actually would have problems because you would try to play a game like, say, MechWarrior 2, and it would use 8 megabytes of RAM. So if you had an 8 megabyte of RAM computer, you couldn't really do anything else at the same time. It would be quite troublesome.
Now, specifically with Firefox or Chrome or browsers, whatever browser people are complaining about where they say it's slow, usually it's not, but forget that, where they're saying it's using too much memory. The browser for most users is 90% of what they do on the computer. The browser basically is their computer.
Yeah, and if you're using the browser for 90% of your work, then you should have no problem letting it use 90% of your RAM.
You want it to use as much RAM as it can because that'll just make your browsing faster and easier.
Yeah, I mean, what is it doing? It's caching things. It's remembering things that it downloaded from the internet and holding them in RAM so that if you need them again, that it'll be able to get them very quickly, and it won't have to go back home to get your dentist card again if you go back to that website again. That's all it's doing, and who cares if it's using memory? It doesn't hurt you unless you run out of memory. And the thing is, it's smart enough to look at how much memory you have free, right, so that it doesn't use all your memory. It's not stupid, right? It's not going to be like, oh, look, we're using all the memory. I guess we should use even more. It's not stupid. It goes, oh, shit, we're out of memory. Let's see, are we using this card more often or this card more often? Well, let's take the most often used card, keep it in the wallet, and get rid of the other one. It's not dumb, right? It's not going to make you swap unless there's absolutely no card that it can get rid of.
Now, many people might say, but what about my phone? Yeah, you write a special browser that handles, memory management is very different on a compact device or a device where power usage matters.
Yeah. The other thing, right, is that there are programs out there that have what are called memory leaks, right? And this is kind of a situation, right? When you're writing a program, if you're writing it in Java or Python or something like that, there's an automatic system called a garbage collector. And what this does is, as you're programming, you're making a variable, putting it in memory. You're using it, and then maybe you don't need it anymore, and you go on and use some other variables or some objects, right? And maybe you load some data from a database, use it, and then you don't need it anymore. Well, if you're writing in Java or Python or any garbage collected language, right, those things that you don't need anymore that are in memory will slowly but surely be removed from memory by the garbage collector, right? So that, your program, won't, slowly grow and grow and grow for no reason. It'll only grow as far as it needs to grow, right? You won't be like, oh, here's a card that I'm going to use once. It's a one-use Metro card, and I'm going to leave that one-use Metro card in my wallet forever, even though I used it once already. It doesn't do that. It's smart enough not to. But if you write a program in, say, C++, Objective-C, some sort of non-garbage collected compiled language, you, as the programmer, when you're writing this program, need to manually manage the memory. You need to specifically code, take this data, put it in the memory, do a bunch of stuff. Now, take that data and remove it from the memory. You need to actually code that specific thing, right? In Java, you don't need to ever say remove that from the memory. You can,
now,
but you don't want to, and you don't need to.
At the same time, many Java-written applications have huge memory leaks.
Well, that's a different problem altogether.
Well, that's just due to the fact that people effectively will leave objects open in a context where they could still be used.
Yep.
And thus will never be garbage collected. And thus, through every iteration of a loop, a new object,
yes,
until
and it is possible to make a memory leak in a garbage collected environment, but it is more common that it will happen in a non-garbage collected environment regardless.
Because you're relying on fallible humans.
Yes, it is possible to write a program that will just fill up the memory slowly but surely with stuff that is not needed in the memory, and then what will happen is your whole computer will slow to a crawl once it runs out of memory and can't remove anything from the memory. And that is because the program is written poorly.
What's interesting is a lot of people, this is kind of a more technical aside, Windows and Linux handle this situation very differently. And I realized, looking in the internet for some unrelated thing, that many people have encountered something scary in the Linux world.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be using their computer, and it slows down, and suddenly shit starts crashing.
Yep.
And they look in var log messages, or usually they didn't configure logging right, so the console starts writing this line, OOM killer invoked.
Yeah, so Linux in the kernel has a thing called the OOM killer.
Out of memory.
The out-of-memory killer. And what it does is when your computer runs out of memory and runs out of swap space, so it can't even do the page thrashing to the disk anymore, it is literally out of memory. It
usually
has
happens
nowhere to go.
Usually happens when you've got an application that is crashing in such a way, which is actually fairly common, especially with daemons that are poorly written or that do something very intensive, like market data handlers.
Yep. Or if someone has like an infinite fork loop that they wrote in a bash
They'll
script.
get out of control and just fill the RAM in the space of a second.
Yep. What Linux will do is it will, based on priorities, this prioritizing algorithm.
It's semi-random in some cases.
It depends, right? You can go look up the algorithm.
Yeah, I don't even know
want.
the algorithm.
It will pick a process. It'll pick something that is using memory and kill it. So let's say you've got Firefox and Apache server and an instant message client and an evil thing and MySQL server. And
Never mind the million other things that are running in the background.
Yeah, and they're all running, right? And suddenly your computer runs out of memory, right? The Linux kernel will be just like, MySQL, I pick you. You are now gone. And it just kills it. And now suddenly there's a whole bunch of free memory. The Linux kernel basically just reaches into your wallet. And it's like, we were out of room in this wallet for more cards, and I have a card that has to go in the wallet. Well, I'm picking a card out of the wallet, and I'm throwing it in the shredder. And now we've got cards are all in place again. Good.
Now, the thing is, very rarely will the OOM killer save you, because usually
it kills something that you wanted to be running.
Or even if it kills stuff you didn't want, whatever went crazy is like, oh, more RAM.
Yeah.
Goody.
But the thing is, the OOM killer probably will eventually kill the evil thing, but the thing is, the evil thing is usually something that you want running.
Yep.
So pretty much no matter what, you're going to be either, your computer will keep working, right? And you'll be able to fix it because the computer will have free memory, so you'll be able to connect to it and log in and enter commands to solve the problem, which is great. The problem is something that you wanted to keep running is now not running.
Well, the two cases I've run into primarily with the OOM killer, and my advice to all of you, a lot of people Google on the internet looking for, what do I do to recover from the OOM killer? You know what? Reboot. That is
usually,
literally the only safe way because you don't know what it killed, and you're not.
And you don't
gonna-
know how it killed it. It might if it killed it with kill-9, that program might have ended in a weird state, especially if it was like a database. Or
I mean,
something.
you want to recover manually? All right, dig through var log messages and figure out what it killed in what order, and then run an LSOF to figure out what files are still being held open by zombie processes.
Yeah, it's a
and
lot of work.
BS. Basically, you got to reboot. But two, usually when I see killer invoked and it didn't somehow kill the bad process, it'll end up getting to init, and then your machine's done.
Yeah.
And then you have to reboot because there's literally nothing you can do.
Right. Windows, on the other hand, basically just goes,
Yeah, even Windows Server, as far as I've seen, just sits there forever.
Yeah, pretty much.
And you have to just like hard reboot it.
You have to push the reset button because it just will just
Or
thrash.
you know what?
It'll
You know
thrash
what?
for all
IT
eternity.
guys out there, if you have to physically touch a machine to reboot it, omae wa mo shinderu.
Yeah, pretty much.
You should have some sort of rat card, open managed,
At least the
IBM,
KVM.
RDM, whatever.
At the least, KVM.
Yep. Gotta have something to remotely reboot shit.
Yeah.
Physically
Especially
reboot shit.
if you're in a data center, because there's no way you're going to have to go down there.
Yeah, dude,
walk,
we have the data.
Find the machine that's probably labeled with some numbers, look up in a book to figure out which numbers match up to which machine.
I think that's about all. I mean, really, we just wanted to kind of cover memory, mostly because I want to end this stupid debate about memory usage and memory leaks in browsers.
I do want to spend like 2 minutes though talking about how different memories work, right? So the registers in the CPU, those are flip-flops. If you want to know what a flip-flop is, look it up on the
We did a
internet.
show on that, I
We
think.
did, right? So the memory that's in your RAM, the SD RAM, right? You know how that works?
Yeah, actually, I took a class on that at RIT.
So do you know how it works?
Well, let's see. You want me to actually explain? I'm trying to remember. Pretty much.
I don't think you know how it works.
Isn't it capacitative?
It is.
Yeah.
It is a grid of capacitors, basically, really tiny capacitors and a whole lot of them. And the computer will charge them up. And you know, a capacitor is like a little temporary battery. So if it's holding a charge, that's a 1, and and then it lets the charge go, and now that capacitor is a 0. So it's a grid of a zillion capacitors, and it can charge them up and discharge them. And that is how it's 1s and 0s. But obviously, if the computer turns off, you lose all the memory in RAM because all the capacitors empty out. Just like, you know, if you turn the computer off, all the flip-flops go to 0 also.
Okay. Because basically what I was worried is that you were going for a more specific answer about like dynamic RAM versus static RAM,
it's too
whether or
much.
not to refresh intervals.
That is too advanced for these people. But
that is why I was equivocating.
But that is also why there are security vulnerabilities, right, where you can actually turn a computer off, take the RAM stick out really quick, and read the memory out of it because the capacitors don't drain instantly. Right, there were some security vulnerabilities where people were extracting hard drive encryption, disk encryption keys.
Using liquid nitrogen to cool RAM and then pull it out.
They would cool the RAM with liquid nitrogen, pull the stick out. The capacitors would still be holding their charge because they were so cold, and then they would read the memory really quickly. But of course, you have physical access, you have everything anyway, so it's just a fun proof of concept.
You know where it would be useful? If people, especially, you know, a terrorist or a financial person who needed to get away with something, did our strategy. Laptop, boot CD, RAM only.
Yep. There's also, right, BIOSes-based CMOS is basically like a circuit breaker, right? It's a whole bunch of, you know, just like the circuit breaker in your basement, only much smaller. And that's how that works. It's, you know, basically if the breakers are turned to the one way, it's 0, and if they're turned the other way, it's 1. And those, right, the circuit breaker switches in your basement, they don't move around unless the fuse gets tripped, right? So, you know, on a BIOS, right, the fuse is only tripped manually. It's not, you know, it's not hooked up to a fuse. It's hooked up to a manual, you know, flash device. So you're manually controlling which way the switches go. So you put something in that memory, it's there forever. You know, and a hard drive is a magnetic disk. You know, it sets the different little spots on the disk to be 0 or 1 by turning the magnets around.
Now, you might talk about a solid-state disk. Those are just flash memory. It's just flash memory and a hard drive form factor with better logic.
Yep.
That's it.
Flash memory is weird.
What about ferrite core?
That's also magnets.
Yeah.
A lot of the other kinds of memory are just magnets. Like tape is magnets. You know, there are some physical memory storage formats like
Abacus.
Gears. Marbles and slots.
Yep. I've made a fairly complex binary computer out of marbles in slots with flip-flop switches to not technically cheat. but to technically completely win a science Olympiad competition.
There's physical switches. You just turn the switch left or right like a relay.
Yep.
There's all kinds of ways to store a 0 or a 1, but the ones in your computer are mostly flip-flops, magnets, flash, and grid of capacitors. Those are the biggest ones.
But really, look at your RAM usage and look at it for
No,
real.
don't look at your RAM usage.
No, look at it to know. Make sure that you've got a big set of cache. Don't look for free memory. Look for memory that's cached. And if you have none, if it's all being used legit, yeah, you need more RAM.
But
lack of RAM is almost never the cause of your problem.
If you see a program using a lot of RAM, just completely ignore it.
I mean,
it's
dude,
not a big deal.
I edited an hour of 1080p. And you know what? 6 gigs of RAM was plenty.
Yeah, unless you are running out of RAM, like your disk is thrashing, just completely ignore. Who cares if Firefox is using 600 megabytes? It's only making Firefox faster. It's not a problem. It's not an issue. Some other program that uses 20 megabytes is probably poorly written because it's not caching anything.
As an aside, if you think that your browser is using way too much RAM or it's growing, has a memory leak, odds are it doesn't, and some shitty add-on that you installed is in fact the cause of the problem.
That could be possible. As long as your disk isn't thrashing, just ignore how much memory is being used. However, one thing you should be aware of, right, is that when you're using many programs at once, you might just have to close something. Like if you want to play a 3D game that's incredibly advanced, it might need like 2 gigs plus of RAM to hold all those textures and all that other kinds of stuff, especially if your video card doesn't have enough memory to hold all the textures in it, because that's what video card memory is used for, holding textures. Your PCI Express or your AGP slot you will actually store some of the textures in your regular RAM. So if you might end up using tons of RAM when playing a game. So maybe if you don't have a lot of RAM, maybe you only have 2 gigs, and your video card only has half a gig, you might want to close your browser before you play a game, and you'll be fine.
And if you're buying a computer, building a computer, buying RAM, pretty much, how many DIMMs do you have? And then look at the instruction book. Put in the minimum number of DIMMs to get whatever interleaving or whatever setup it's got.
Some computers have dual, dual whatever, and some have triple.
Like mine has triple. I have 6 DIMMs. I got to fill at least 3 to have optimal
Yes,
setup.
you have to buy 3 sticks of RAM for that computer. My computer, you need to buy 2 sticks and putting them in alternating slots.
Pretty much, get 4 gigs of RAM or 6 gigs of RAM. And
RAM
you'll be
is
fine.
so cheap, there's no reason not to get a ton of it. And if your computer has even if you have a crappy netbook or something, right? A RAM upgrade is ridiculously inexpensive. So if you are running out, let's say you have a gig of RAM in a netbook and Firefox is using 500, well, it's not Firefox's fault for using 500. It's totally fine. It's
Flash's fault.
It's your fault for having 1 gig. So go and buy a 2 or a 4 gig stick and put it in that netbook and it'll be so awesome.
There is the side topic of RAM disks, which are not as commonly used in the modern era.
Well, that's because we have solid-state disks.
And just because we have tons of RAM.
That's true.
But there was a time I once made a RAM disk and installed Doom onto it.
Yeah, basically what some people do, if you have so much RAM that you've got a whole bunch of extra, you don't even know what to do with it, right? Like, let's say my computer had 20 gigs of RAM. It's like, well, obviously I'm not even using 4, so what the fuck am I going to do with 20? Well, I could make a disk in RAM, right? So the computer thinks it has a new hard disk, like E:, but really it's RAM that's being used, right? Which means when the computer turns off, that disk is going to be erased.
So I install, say, Firefox there.
I can install a program into that RAM, and now that program will load extremely quickly.
So on boot, let's say, I have a program that gets installed into this drive and runs. It doesn't know. You don't have to do anything special in the program, and yet you'll get crazy performance. It's just completely volatile.
Yeah, or if you're editing a video, or if you're editing a very large Photoshop file, right, you could save it into that RAM disk, and then it'll be very quick to save and load that file as long as the computer doesn't turn off.
Or what
It'll be safe, and then what you could do is you would copy that file to your actual regular disk that's safe every once in a while so that you don't lose your information.
My current computer, I put the operating system, Windows, on a 32 gigabyte solid-state drive.
Yep.
And everything else is on slow-ass 7,200 RPM, half terabyte drives.
And as a result, the computer boots very, very quickly.
My computer boots faster than... I'm trying to think of something. It's like 10 seconds.
Yeah, it's really fast. And, many common operations, because the most commonly accessed files are the operating system files in the Windows folder, are gonna happen very, very quickly. But all the things that you don't do so often, like how often do you open up, a game? Once a day?
Not even that. Like most of my media is on the NAS over the network on the gigabit Ethernet because I don't.
But it's gigabit Ethernet's pretty fast.
It is pretty fast.
A serial ATA drive is 3 gigabit per second, so gigabit Ethernet
Dude,
is
in
1.
Beacon, we could stream stuff off of our computers upstairs and that 100 megabit, and it was fine.
Yeah, you should see me streaming over my gigabit at home, right?
Yeah.
It's 1 gigabit is fast enough to get music and video files. You know, it maybe not fast enough to run a game Counter-Strike. You don't want to install Counter-Strike on the NAS. That's stupid.
This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music, Kat Lee for web design, and Brando K for the logos.
Be sure to visit our website at frontrowcrew.com for show notes, discussion, news, and more.
Remember, Geeknights is not 1, but 4 different shows. Sci-Tech Mondays, Gaming Tuesdays, Anime Comic Wednesdays, and Indiscriminate Thursdays.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.